Hello, this is Sea Siren Janine, and today I'm going to be reading Wonder Woman Warbringer. I'm going to be reading Chapter 3. I have already read the introduction, Chapters 1, Chapters 2, and now I'm on Chapter 3. Please read Chapters 1 and 2 if you're interested. Hello, this is Sea Siren ASMR, and for today's video I'm going to read Chapter 3 of Wonder Woman Warbringer. I've already read Chapters 1 and 2. So go look for that if you want to start from the beginning. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Diana hurried to her room to change clothes and fill a traveling pack with a blanket, rope, lantern, and flint. The rolled bindings she used for her hands when sparring. They would do for bandages in a pinch. 4 hours had passed since Diana left Aaliyah in the cave. The girl must be terrified. Hera's crown, what if she tries to climb down? Diana winced at the thought. Aaliyah had all the substance of a bag of kindling. If she tried to get out of the cave, she'd only end up hurting herself. But there was no time to return to the cliffs. If Diana was going to fix this, she needed to speak to the Oracle before the council did. She opened a green enamel box that she kept by her bed. Then she hesitated. She had never been to see the Oracle, but Diana knew she was dangerous. She could see deep into an Amazon's heart and far into the future. If smoke from her ritual fire, she tracked thousands of lives over the thousands of years, watching the way the currents moved and what could be done about to alter their courses. Access to her predictions always came with a steep cost. The most essential thing was to approach with an offering that would please her, something personal, essential to the supplicant. The green enamel box that Diana held most cherished objects. She shoved the whole thing into her pack and ran down the stairs. She'd been pocketing food throughout the feast, but she stopped at the kitchen for a skinful of hot mulled wine. Through the kitchens were always a tangle of clatter and chaos. Today the staff worked with grim determination, and strange smells rose in billows of steam from cooked pots. "Willow bark," said one of the cooks as Diana peeked beneath the lid. "We're extracting salicylic acid to bring the fevers down." She handed over the goat skin. "You tell Maeve that we hope she feels better soon." All Diana said was, "Thank you." She didn't want to add to her list of lies for the day. The city streets were full of bustle and clamor as people ran back and forth with food, medicine, and supplies to shore up buildings damaged by the quakes. Diana pulled up her hood. She knew she should be at the center of it all, helping, but if her suspicions about Aaliyah were right, then the only solution was to get her off the island as quickly as she could. A glance at the harbor told her that stealing a boat would be close to impossible. The wind had risen to full gale. The sky had gone to the color of slate. The docks were crawling with Amazons trying to secure the fleet before the storm descended in full force. Diana took the eastern road out of the city, the most direct path to the oracle's temple. It was bordered by groves of olive trees, and once she entered their shelter, she broke into a run, setting the fastest pace she dared. As soon as she left the olives behind, traversing vineyards and tidy rows of peach trees clustered with fruit, then passed into the low hills that bordered the marsh at the center of the island. The closer Diana drew to the marsh, the more her unease grew. The marsh lay in a shadow of Mount Tolama and was the only place on the island that existed in a state of permanent near shade. She had never ventured outside. There were stories inside. There were stories of Amazons entering its depths to visit the oracle and emerging weeping or completely mad. When Clarissa had sought an audience at the temple, she returned to the city gibbering and shaking, the blood vessels in both of her eyes broken, her nails bitten down to ragged stumps. She never spoke of what she'd seen, but to this day, Clarissa, a hardened soldier who liked to ride into battle armed with nothing but an axe and her courage, still slept with a lit lantern beside her bed. Diana shivered as she entered the shadows of the marsh trees, draped in veils of moss like funeral goers, the gnarled masses of their exposed roots reflecting sinister shapes in the murky waters. She could hear no sounds of the approaching storm, no familiar bird song, not even the wind. The marsh had its own black music, the lap and the splash of the water as if something rigid back broke its surface and vanished with the flick of a long tail. The scuttle of insects, whispers that rose and fell without reason. Diana heard her name spoken, a chill beneath her ear, but when she turned, heart pounding, no one was there. She glimpsed something with long, hairy legs skittering over a nearby branch and quickened her steps. Diana kept heading what she hoped was due east, farther into the marsh as gloom deepened. She was sure now that something was following her, maybe several things. She could hear the rustle of their creeping legs above. To her left, she could see the glint of what might be shiny black eyes beneath drooping gray swags of lace moss. There is nothing to be afraid of here, she told herself, and she could almost hear the swamp's low, gurgling laugh. With a shudder, she pushed through a curtain of vines, bound together by milky clusters of cobwebs, and stopped. She had imagined the oracle's temple would be like the doomed buildings in her old history books, but now she was confronted with a dense thicket of tree roots, a woven barricade of branches that stretched as high and wide as a fortress wall. It was hard to tell if it had been constructed or it had simply grown out of the swamp. At its center was an opening, the gaping mouth of darkness, deeper and blacker than any starless sky. From it emanated a low, discordant hum, the hungry murmur of a hive, a hornet's nest ready to crack open. Diana gathered her courage, adjusted her pack, and stepped onto a path of wet black stones that led to the entry, leaping from one to the next across the water of dull gray of a clouded mirror. Her sandals slipped over the glossy backs. The air near the entrance felt strangely thick. It lay heavy against her skin, damp and unpleasantly warm. As wet as animals lolling along, she lit the lantern hanging from her pack, took a shallow breath, and stepped inside. Instantly, the lamp went out. Diana heard whispering behind her and turned to see the roots knotting closed over the mouth of the tunnel. She lunged for the entrance, but it was too late. She was alone in the dark. Her heart set a jackrabbit pace in her chest. Over the vibrating insect hum, she could hear the vines and roots shifting around her, and she was suddenly sure they would simply close in, trapping her in the tangled wall forever. She forced herself to shuffle forward, hands held out before her. Her mother wouldn't be afraid of a few branches. Tech would probably give those roots one withering look, and they'd literally wither. The hum grew louder and more human, a sighing, keening sound that arose and fell like a child's weeping. I am not afraid. I am an Amazon, and I have nothing to fear from the island. But this place felt older than the island. It felt older than anything. Gradually, she realized the tunnel was sloping upward and that she could see the dim shapes of her hands, the woven root texture of the walls. Somewhere up ahead, there was light. The tunnel gave way to a room, its ceiling open to the sky. It had been late afternoon when Diana set out, but the sky she was looking at now was black and full of stars. She panicked, wondering if she'd somehow lost time in the tunnel, and then when she realized that the constellations above her were all wrong. Whatever sky was she seeing, it was not her own. The bramble walls held torches alight with silver flames that gave no heat, and a moat of clear water ringed the room's perimeter. At its center, on a perfectly flat circle of stone, a cloaked eater. At its center, a cloaked woman sat beside a bronze brazier. hanging from a tripod, a delicate chain. In it, a proper fire burned, vibrant and orange. Plume of smoke in the star-strewn sky. The woman rose and her hood fell back, revealing the coppery hair, freckled skin. "Maeve!" Diana cried. The oracle's face shifted. She was a wide-eyed child, then a wizened crone, then Hippolyta with amethysts in her ears. She was a monster with black fangs and eyes like opals, then a glowing beauty, her straight nose and full mouth framed by a gold helm. She stepped forward, the shadows shifted. She was Tech now, but Tech as touched by age. Dark skin lined gray at the temples. Diana wanted nothing more than to turn and run. She stayed where she was. "Daughter of Earth," said the oracle, "make your offering." Diana willed herself not to flinch. Daughter of Earth, born of clay. Had the oracle meant those words as an insult? It didn't matter. Diana had come here with a purpose. She sat down her pack and reached inside the green enamel box. Her hands covered over a jade comb Maeve had given her on her last birthday. A carnelian leopard. The little talisman she'd carried for years in her pocket. Its back bowed in the spot where she rubbed her thumb against it for luck. A tapestry of the planets as she appeared at the hour of her birth. It was lumpy and full of mistakes. She and her mother had made it together out of greedy for Hippolyta's time. Diana had pulled rows of thread out every night, hoping they could just keep working on the project forever. She felt along the box's lining, fingering closed over the objects she sought. She looked at the moat. There was no obvious way across, but Diana was not going to ask for instruction. She'd heard enough people speak of the oracle to know that if her sacrifice was to be accepted, she would be permitted 3 questions and no more. She stepped into the water. She could see her foot pass through it, her skin paler beneath the surface. She felt nothing. Maybe the river was a mere illusion. She crossed to the stone island. When she set foot on the smooth rock, the hum of voices dimmed, as if she had entered the eye of a storm. Diana stretched out her hand, willing it to steadiness. She did not want to tremble before the oracle, and uncurled her fingers, revealing the iron arrowhead. It was long enough to cover most of her palm, honed to a cruel point, its tip and crevices stained in a red so dark it looked black in the torch's icy light. The oracle's laugh was as dry as the crackle of a fire. "You bring me a gift you despise." Diana recoiled in shock, hands closed protectively over the arrowhead and drawing it close to her heart. "That is not true. I speak only truth. Perhaps you are not ready to hear it." Diana glanced back at her pack, wondering if she should attempt some other offering. But the oracle said, "No, daughter of Earth, I do not want your jewels or your childish trinkets. I will take the arrow that killed your mother. Though you despise the thing, you may value it still, and the blood of a queen is no small gift." Reluctantly, Diana extended her hand once more. The oracle plucked the bloodied arrowhead from her palm. Her face shifted. She was Hippolyta again. But this time her black hair was unpinned and unbraided, curling around her shoulders, and she wore a white tunic embroidered in gold. She was as Diana remembered her the day Hippolyta had found her daughter crying in the stables after Diana had overheard two of the Amazons talking before their daily ride. "They said I'm a monster," she told her mother. "They said I'm made of mud." Hippolyta had dried her tears with the sleeve of her tunic, and that night she'd given Diana the arrowhead. Now the oracle spoke with Hippolyta's voice, the same words she'd said sitting in the lamplight beside Diana's bed. "There is no joy in having been born mortal. You need never to know the sorrow of what it is to be human. Among all of us, only you will never know the pain of death." The words had meant little Diana at the time, but she'd never forgotten them. She'd never been able to explain why she treasured the arrowhead so much. Her mother had intended it a warning, as a reminder to value the gift of life she'd been given. But to Diana, it had been the thing that tied her to a larger world, even if it was through something as gruesome as her mother's blood. The oracle wore the face of an aged tech once more. She tossed the arrowhead into the brazier. A shower of orange-hued sparks shot upward. "You bring me gifts of death today," said the oracle, "just as you have brought death to our shores." Diana snapped up. "You know about Aaliyah?" "Is that your first question?" "No," said Diana hurriedly. She was going to have to be smarter. "The land shakes, the stalk that never wilts grow weary." "All because of me," said Diana miserably. "All because of Aaliyah and those that came before her. Speak your questions, daughter of earth." Some tiny part of Diana had hoped she might have been mistaken, that Aaliyah's rescue and the disasters on Themyscira had been a mere coincidence. Now she could not hide from the truth of what she'd done and the trouble it had wrought. If she was going to make things right, she would have to have a word her questions carefully. "How do I save Themyscira?" "Do nothing." The oracle waved her hand, and smoke above the brazier acred over the moat. Through it, Diana saw a figure looking back at her from the water. It was Aaliyah. Diana realized she was seeing into the cave of the cliff's side. Aaliyah huddled beneath the blanket, shaking, eyes closed, forehead sheened with sweat. "But she wasn't injured," Diana protested. "The island is poisoning her, just as she is poisoning the island." "But Themyscira is older and stronger. The girl will die, and with her will pass the taint of the mortal world. Most of your sisters will survive and return to health. The city can be rebuilt. The island can be purified once more." "Most will survive? Will Maeve live?" The words burned on Diana's tongue, begging to be spoken. "I don't understand," she said, careful not to ask a question. "I'm not sick," said Aaliyah, "and Aaliyah was fine when I left her." "You are of the island, born uncorrupted, Athanatos, deathless. You will not sicken as your sisters do, but your proximity may prolong the girl's life. May even soothe her, but it cannot heal her. She will die, and the island will live. All will be as it should." "No," Diana said, surprised at the anger in her voice. "How do I save Aaliyah's life?" Her second question gone. "You must not." "That isn't an answer." Then call her by the name she given to her by ancestors. Haptandra, the hand of war. Look into the smoke now and know the truth of what she is. Again the smoke billowed up from the brazier and spread over the water. This time Diana looked. It felt as if she'd been engulfed in a flame. She stood at the center of the battleground, surrounded by fallen soldiers. As her body strewn over a ruined landscape, limbs like driftwood on a black ash shore, she flinched as a massive armored vehicle roared by, a war machine of the type she'd seen in books, crushing the bodies beneath its treads. She could hear a rattling sound in the distance, explosions that came in rapid bursts. As her eyes focused on the horror around her, a helpless moan escaped her lips. There, only a few feet away, lay Maeve, her heart pierced by a sword, pinned to the ground like a pale insect. The bodies that surrounded Diana were Amazons. Her eye caught on the splash of dark hair. Her mother. Battle armor smashed and broken, her body discarded like so much refuse. She heard a war cry and turned, reaching for a weapon. She did not have. She saw Tech, her body glazed in sweat, her eyes battle bright, face down. Some kind of monster, the kind from stories, half man, half jackal. The jackal's jaws closed over Tech's throat, shook her like a doll, and tossed her aside. Tech fell, blood gushing from her torn jugular, her eyes focused on Diana, blazing with accusation. Daughter of Earth. Diana gasped, struggling for breath. The image cleared, and she was looking down at her own face in the water, her cheeks wet with tears. "You're getting salt in my scrying pool," said the oracle. Diana wiped the tears from her face. "That can't be. I saw monsters. I saw my sisters." Aaliyah is no ordinary girl. She is polluted by death. As all mortals are, Diana argued. What was different about Aaliyah? The island had rejected her as it would any human presence. If Diana could just get her away from Themyscira, everything would return to normal. It is not her death she carries, but the death of the world. Do you think chance brought her boat so close to our shores? Aaliyah is a Warbringer, born of the same line as Helen, who herself sired by Nemesis. Helen, not Helen of 10 years the Trojan Wars raged. No god was spared, no hero, no Amazon. So it will be if Aaliyah is allowed to live. She is Heptandra. Where she goes, there will be strife. With each breath, she draws us closer to Armageddon. But it was Helen's beauty that caused the war. The oracle cut a dismissive hand through the air, and the torches flickered. Who tells those stories? A tale of vengeful goddesses who wager in human lives for vanity's sake? Of course, men believe a woman's power must lie in the finesse of her features, the shapeliness of her limbs. You know better, daughter of Earth. Helen's blood carried it in war, and in her 7th year, those powers reached their peak. So it was with every Warbringer. So it will be with Aaliyah. You have seen it in the waters. A line of Warbringers. Diana turned the words over. Was it possible? How could a mortal, even a mortal whose ancestry could be traced to Nemesis, goddess of retribution, cause so much misery? The oracle was watching her closely. Heed me, daughter of Earth. When a Warbringer is born, destruction is inevitable. One has been the catalyst for every great conflict in the world of man. With the coming of the new moon, Aaliyah's powers will reach their apex, and a war will come. She paused, unless she dies before then. The explosion was an accident, Diana said, understanding. As understanding came, someone wanted Aaliyah dead. The explosion wasn't an accident. Someone wanted Aaliyah dead. Many someones will do all they can to make sure the world does not enter the age of bloodshed, but you need to do nothing. Simply wait, and the girl will die as she is meant to in the shipwreck. It is the best way. Diana's eyes narrowed. She'd read the story. She knew how the oracle spoke. The best way, she considered. The oracle's mouth turned down at the corners, as if she truly could read Diana's thoughts. For the first time, Diana asked herself why the oracle had chosen to appear with Tech's face. To frighten her? To intimidate her? The best way, but not the only way. The oracle's eyes flashed a silver fire, as if they had blazed with the same light as the torches on the wall. Ask your final question and be gone from this place. Diana opened her mouth, but the oracle raised a graceful hand. Think carefully. I'm not always obliging in the gifts I accept. You worry over the fate of one girl when the future of the world hangs in the balance. Worry instead of your own future. Wouldn't you like to know if Tech Mesa is right about you? If you will bring glory or despair to the Amazons? Eventually your mother will grow weary of rule. Wouldn't you like to know if you will ever truly be queen, or if you are doomed to spend your life in half shadow? I can show you all of it, daughter of Earth. Diana hesitated. She thought of Tech's words, of her mother's denials. The oracle might tell her if she was an abomination, secretly reviled by the gods, destined to bring only misery to her people. But what if the oracle told her she carried the gods' blessings, that she could be a boon to her sisters instead of a curse? It would absolve her mother, cease the endless speculation about Diana. Tech would never be able to say another word against either of them. But would it make Diana any more of an Amazon? I could ask how to obtain their approval. I could ask how to win glory in battle. She thought of Aaliyah's hand gripping the hull, Aaliyah's pulse beating beneath her questing fingers. A girl restored to life by Diana's own breath. So many people, and Aaliyah dies. Save my people, and Aaliyah dies. Save Aaliyah, and I'll watch my sisters slaughtered. Really, it made the question simple. How do I save everyone? Fury suffused the oracle's features. Her image flickered. A serpent, a Tech, a skull, a black-gummed wolf. Her eyes were gemstones, snakes ribbed above her head and pouring from her mouth. Stubborn as all girls are stubborn, she snarled. Reckless as all girls are reckless. The words were out before Diana even thought better of them. And you were never reckless, stubborn girl? A pointless question, but it didn't matter now. Diana had asked the important question first, and the oracle's anger made her believe it had been the right one. The anguished hum rose around them, an aching lament layered within a wild sorrow, and in it Diana heard of the echoes of her sisters' cries on that terrible battlefield. When the oracle spoke, she was no longer Tech, but bore a different face, one that seemed hewn from the light itself. The Warbringer must reach the spring at Therapin before the sun sets on the first day of hecatombation. Where Helen rests, the Warbringer may be purified, purged of the taint flesh that death has stained her line from its beginning. There may be her power be unleashed and never pass to another. There may her power be leashed and never pass to another. Therapne, Greece. It would mean leaving the island. Impossible, and yet the line of the Warbringers would be broken? The oracle said nothing, but she made no denials. If Aaliyah on Themyscira, a new Warbringer would be born. Maybe in a month, maybe in 100 years, but it would happen. I see you, daughter of earth. I see your dreams of glory. But what you do not see is the danger. Factions in the world of man hunt the Warbringer. Some seek to end her life, and they may ensure peace. Some seek to protect her life, that they may bring about an age of conflict. In less than 2 weeks, Hecatombeon begins. You cannot hope to reach the spring in time. You are only one girl. Diana clenched her fist, thinking of the bloodied arrowhead the oracle had accepted as sacrifice, her mother's blood. That same blood flowed in Diana's veins. I am an Amazon. Are you? You're not a hero. You're not battle-tested. This quest is far beyond your skills and strength. Do not doom the world for the sake of your pride. That isn't fair, Diana said. I'm trying to do what's right. Even if, as she said the words, Diana knew they weren't entirely true. She did want glory. She did want the chance to prove herself, not just with a foot race or a wrestling match, but with a hero's quest, something that no one can deny. She wanted to argue with the oracle, but what's the point in debating an all-seeing ancient? Go home, said the oracle. Go back to Ephesium. Comfort your sweet friend. Let her know all her suffering will soon be at an end. When the council comes, I will tell them nothing. No one ever needed to know what you've done. Your crime will remain a secret, and you need not fear exile. The island will return to what it was. The world will be safe, and you may live in peace with your sisters. But should you take the girl from the island? A hum rose to a howl, 1,000 howls, screams rising from the charred earth, the clash of swords, the lamentations of her dying sisters, misery amplified 1,000 times. The sound of a future Diana could prevent by simply doing nothing. Go, commanded the oracle. Diana turned and ran, back into the tunnel, into the dark, unable to escape that terrible howl. She ran with caution, scraped her shoulders against the bramble wall, tripped as the tunnel slanted downwards, stumbled onto her knees. Then she was back up, running again, that horrible chorus of anguish building to a shriek that vibrated through her bones and hammered at her skull. The roots parted before her, and she tumbled out of the temple and onto the brackish water of the marsh. She dragged herself upright, breathless, in a lurch towards the banks. Through the gloom of the marsh she fled, trying to put as much distance as she could between herself and the temple. Only after Diana burst from the darkness of the trees and crested the first set of low hills, she did not allow herself to stop. She could smell the sweet green scent of honey myrtle, feel the fresh splatter of rain on her skin. But even here she did not feel safe. I am an Amazon. In the whispers of the leaves she heard the oracle sneering. Are you? She could not risk it. She could not risk her sisters' lives for the sake of a girl she barely knew. She'd been foolish to dive into the sea this morning, but she could make the right choice now. The earth rumbled beneath Diana's feet. Lightning split the sky. She hitched her pack more securely on her shoulders and headed for the cave. Aaliyah was dying. If Diana could not save her, at least she could make sure she did not die alone.